The incident on Virix 7. Virix 7 was a quiet planet, far removed from the galactic core's political intrigues and wars. Its serene landscapes and abundant resources made it a prime candidate for the United Galactic Federation's next diplomatic summit. Delegates from over 100 species gathered, their ships gleaming like jewels in the soft, lavender skies. Among them were the humans, relatively new to the galactic scene, but quickly earning a reputation for their adaptability and resilience. Ambassador Lydia Rains was chosen to represent humanity. She was known for her calm demeanor and razor-sharp intellect, making her a natural choice for such a significant event. Accompanying her were her trusted security officer, Captain Marcus Steele, and a small delegation of human diplomats. The humans were determined to make a good impression, aware that their species was still viewed with a mix of curiosity and caution by many of the older civilizations. The summit began smoothly, with species discussing trade agreements, environmental protections, and joint scientific endeavors. It wasn't until the third day that tensions began to surface. The Neritians, a tall, slender species known for their rigid adherence to tradition and their disdain for what they considered primitive species, had taken issue with the humans' presence. Their ambassador, a particularly haughty individual named Valis, made no attempt to hide his contempt. "Tell me, Ambassador Rains," Valis sneered during a public session, "how does your kind intend to contribute to the Federation? Surely not with your outdated technology and barbaric customs." Lydia remained composed, though the insult stung. "Humanity offers innovation, resilience, and a willingness to collaborate for the greater good," she replied evenly. "We may be new, but we have much to contribute." Valis scoffed. "Innovation, resilience? I've heard these words before. Empty rhetoric from a species still crawling out of its evolutionary cradle. Perhaps your kind should stick to what you're good at, violence." A murmur rippled through the assembly, and Lydia felt Marcus stiffen beside her. She subtly placed a hand on his arm, a silent reminder to remain calm. The humans were aware that their reputation as a violent species preceded them, and they had worked hard to dispel that image. But Valis's words were a provocation, and everyone in the room knew it. Before Lydia could respond, the situation took a darker turn. A Neritian guard approached Valis and whispered something in his ear. The ambassador's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in anger. "It seems," Valis announced, his voice dripping with malice, "that a group of human miners on the outskirts of this very planet have been caught engaging in illegal activities. The punishment for such crimes on Virix 7 is death." Lydia's blood ran cold. She knew about the mining outpost, a small operation extracting rare minerals under a legal contract with the planetary government. But if Valis had his way, the truth wouldn't matter. He saw an opportunity to tarnish humanity's reputation and would stop at nothing to achieve it. "That's a lie," Lydia said, her voice steady but laced with underlying tension. "Our miners have followed all local laws. Any accusations should be thoroughly investigated before any action is taken." Valis smiled, a predator savoring the moment before the kill. "I'm afraid the investigation has already been concluded. The miners are to be executed at dawn." Marcus stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You can't do this. We won't let you." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Valis looked at Marcus with disdain. "And what will you do, human? Resort to your natural instincts? Start a war over a few criminals?" Lydia quickly intervened, placing herself between Marcus and Valis. "We will resolve this matter through diplomatic channels," she said firmly. "There is no need for violence." But Valis was already turning away, dismissing them with a wave of his hand. "Diplomacy is wasted on your kind. The executions will proceed as scheduled." As Valis and his entourage left the chamber, Lydia felt the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She knew that if the miners were killed, it would not only be a tragedy, but also a political disaster. the Federation would see humanity as weak, unable to protect its own. Worse, it could spark a conflict that humanity was not yet prepared to face. "Ambassador," Marcus said quietly, his voice strained, "we can't let this happen." Lydia nodded, her mind racing. "We won't. But we need to be smart about this. We can't play into Varlus's hands." She looked around the chamber, at the delegates who had watched the exchange with varying degrees of interest and concern. Humanity's future in the galaxy hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. "We need to find a way to stop this," Lydia said, determination hardening in her voice. "And we need to do it before dawn." The rescue mission. As soon as the assembly adjourned, Lydia, Marcus, and the rest of the human delegation retreated to their quarters. The mood was tense, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on everyone. Lydia knew they had to act fast. The Naritians were known for their ruthlessness, and there was no doubt in her mind that Varles would carry out the executions if given the chance. "We need a plan," Marcus said, pacing the room like a caged predator. "We can't just sit here and wait." Lydia agreed, but the situation was complicated. Any overt military action would confirm the worst fears of the other species about humanity's violent tendencies. They needed to find a solution that didn't involve open conflict, but still prevented the executions. "I've been in contact with the miners," Lydia said. "They're being held in an Naritian outpost on the outskirts of the city. The security there is tight, but it's not impenetrable." Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her. "You're thinking of a rescue mission." "It's risky," Lydia admitted, "but it might be our only option. We can't let Varles use this as an excuse to paint us as aggressors." One of the other diplomats, a young woman named Elena, spoke up. "What about appealing to the planetary government? If we can prove that the miners are innocent, they might intervene." Lydia shook her head. "Varles has too much influence here. By the time we gather the evidence and make our case, it will be too late. We need to act now." Marcus nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we go in, get our people out, and disappear before they know what happened." The plan was set in motion. Lydia used her diplomatic channels to gather information about the outpost, while Marcus coordinated with the security team to prepare for the mission. Every detail had to be perfect. They couldn't afford any mistakes. As the night wore on, the tension in the room grew palpable. Lydia tried to remain calm, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on her. She knew that if the mission failed, it could lead to a full-blown conflict with the Naritians, something humanity could ill afford. Finally, the time came. The team was ready, dressed in black combat suits designed for stealth. Lydia stayed behind to coordinate from the ship, her heart pounding as she watched the mission unfold through the live feed. The outpost was heavily guarded, as expected. Marcus led the team with precision, moving silently through the shadows, disabling security systems, and neutralizing guards with non-lethal force. They had to be quick and quiet. Any alarm would bring the full force of the Naritian military down on them. When they reached the holding cells, they found the miners alive but badly shaken. Marcus quickly set to work freeing them, while the rest of the team secured the perimeter. Time was running out, and Lydia could feel her pulse racing as she watched the clock. Come on," she muttered under her breath, willing the team to move faster. Finally, the miners were free, and the team began their retreat. But just as they were about to exit the outpost, an alarm blared through the facility. Someone had discovered the disabled guards. "Move! Move!" Marcus shouted, leading the way as the team sprinted for the extraction point. The quiet night exploded into chaos. Naritian soldiers flooded the area, firing energy weapons that lit up the darkness with deadly bursts of light. The humans returned fire, but their priority was escape, not combat. Lydia watched in horror as the scene unfolded. The situation was spiraling out of control. They had to get out of there before it was too late. "Get them out of there, Marcus," she urged over the comms. "We're almost there," Marcus replied, his voice tense but focused. The team reached the extraction point, where a stealth ship was waiting to take them back to the human vessel. But as they boarded, an Orician gunship swooped down from above, firing a barrage of missiles at the ship. The stealth ship's pilot managed to evade most of the missiles, but one struck the side of the craft, causing it to lurch violently. Inside, the team was thrown around, but they managed to hold on as the pilot stabilized the ship and punched the engines to full power. They rocketed into the sky, leaving the Orician forces behind. But the damage was done. The stealth ship was badly damaged, and it was only a matter of time before they were pursued. Get them back here. The stealth ship sped through the night, its engines straining against the damage inflicted by the Orician gunship. Lydia's hands gripped the edge of the control console so tightly her knuckles turned white. On the live feed, she could see Marcus and the team bracing themselves as the ship rocked violently, every jolt sending a fresh wave of fear through her. "Status," Lydia demanded, her voice cutting through the tension. "Shields are failing, and the propulsion system took a hit," the pilot reported grimly. "We won't make it back to the main vessel if we don't lose our pursuers." Marcus, still in his combat gear, moved to the cockpit. "What's the closest safe zone? We need a place to lay low until the heat dies down." The pilot pulled up the star map, a holographic display flickering with potential destinations. "There's a small moon nearby, mostly uninhabited. We could make it there, but it's risky. If they follow us, we'll be sitting ducks." Lydia interjected over the comms. "We don't have a choice. Take us to the moon. We'll figure out our next move once we're clear." The ship veered sharply as the pilot changed course, heading toward the desolate moon. Behind them, the Orician gunships continued their pursuit, relentless and deadly. Lydia's heart pounded as she monitored their progress, knowing that every second counted. Back in the ship's main hold, the rescued miners sat huddled together, their expressions a mix of relief and terror. One of them, a grizzled man with a deep scar running down his cheek, caught Marcus's eye. "You saved us," the man said, his voice rough from days of captivity. "We thought we were goners." Marcus gave a curt nod. "We're not out of the woods yet. Stay sharp and be ready for anything." As the stealth ship approached the moon, the Orician gunships unleashed another barrage of missiles. The pilot executed a series of evasive maneuvers, but the damage to the ship was taking its toll. One missile clipped the rear thrusters, sending the ship into a dangerous spin. "Brace for impact," the pilot shouted as the ship careened toward the moon's surface. The impact was jarring, the ship skidding across the rocky terrain before coming to a shuddering halt. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, and the lights flickered ominously. Marcus and the others scrambled to their feet, checking for injuries. "We're down," the pilot said, his voice strained. "We've lost main power, and the engines are shot. We're stuck here." Lydia's voice crackled over the comms. "Marcus, what's your status?" "We're grounded," Marcus replied. "The ship's a wreck, and we're sitting out here in the open. If the Oricians find us, it's over." Lydia's mind raced as she weighed their options. They were too far from the main vessel to expect immediate rescue, and the Oricians would likely launch a ground search soon. They needed to find cover, and fast. "There's a cave system nearby," the pilot said, pulling up a topographical map of the area. "It's not far, but we'll have to move quickly." Marcus took charge, rallying the team and the miners. "Everyone, grab what you can carry and move out. We've got to reach those caves before they zero in on our position." The group disembarked from the crippled ship, moving swiftly across the barren landscape. The air was thin, the gravity lighter than Earth's, but the urgency of their situation kept them moving at a brisk pace. Marcus led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of pursuit. As they neared the cave entrance, Lydia's voice came through the comms again. "Marcus, there's something you need to know. I've been reviewing the data we gathered on the Oricians. Varlas isn't just after the miners. He's targeting you specifically. Marcus paused, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? There's a personal vendetta here, Lydia explained. During the last skirmish with the Neritians, you led a mission that cost Varlas's brother his life. He's been looking for an excuse to take you down, and this whole situation with the miners is just the pretext he needed. Marcus's jaw tightened. So this isn't just about discrediting humanity. It's about revenge. Exactly, Lydia confirmed. You need to be extra careful. Varlas won't stop until he's got you, dead or alive. Marcus absorbed the information, his resolve hardening. He had faced enemies before, but this was different. This was personal. He glanced back at the group, the miners and his team, all depending on him to get them out of this mess. We'll make it, Marcus said, more to himself than anyone else. We'll survive this, and Varlas will regret the day he crossed paths with us. The group reached the entrance to the caves, a yawning black mouth in the side of a craggy cliff. They hurried inside, the darkness swallowing them as they ventured deeper into the tunnels. The temperature dropped, the air growing colder and damper the further they went. Marcus kept his weapon at the ready, every sense on high alert. After several minutes of walking, they found a large cavern where they could regroup. The miners collapsed against the walls, exhausted but grateful for the temporary respite. Marcus and the security team set up a perimeter, ensuring they would be alerted to any approaching danger. Lydia's voice echoed through the comms, a lifeline of hope in the darkness. I'm coordinating with our ship. We're sending a rescue team, but it'll take time. You need to stay hidden until they arrive. Marcus nodded, though he knew she couldn't see him. Understood. We'll hold out here as long as we can. But as he scanned the faces of his comrades, he knew that time was not on their side. The Neritians were relentless, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Marcus could feel the rage bubbling just beneath the surface, a cold, controlled fury that had been his constant companion through countless battles. This time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about justice. And if Varlas wanted to see the full extent of human rage, Marcus was more than willing to show him. The final stand. The caves provided some shelter, but Marcus knew it wouldn't last. The Neritians were nothing if not methodical. They would sweep the area until they found their quarry, and when they did, they would attack with overwhelming force. The team had to be ready for that moment, no matter what it took. The miners, though grateful for their rescue, were on edge. They had heard of Neritian cruelty, and the thought of being recaptured was a fate worse than death. Marcus could see the fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else, a growing sense of determination. These people had been through hell, and they weren't about to give up now. Captain, one of the miners, a woman with short-cropped hair and a determined expression, approached Marcus. We're ready to fight if it comes to that. We know how to handle ourselves. Marcus appreciated the offer, but he knew the miners were no match for trained Neritian soldiers. Stay alert and keep your heads down. We'll do the fighting. Just focus on staying safe. The woman nodded, her eyes hardening with resolve. We're not going down without a fight. As they settled into their positions, Marcus checked in with Lydia. What's the status on that rescue team? They're on their way, Lydia replied, her voice tinged with concern. But it's going to take time to reach you. You need to hold out a little longer. We'll hold, Marcus said firmly. We've got no other choice. He turned his attention back to the cavern entrance, where the security team was setting up a series of makeshift defenses. They had limited resources, but Marcus knew how to make the most of what they had. He directed his team to create choke points, setting traps, and preparing ambushes. If the Neritians wanted to get to them, they'd have to pay a steep price. The hours dragged on, the tension in the air growing thicker with each passing minute. Marcus could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. He had led his team through worse situations before, and he would do it again. Just as he was about to check the perimeter, the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the cavern. Marcus froze, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. The Naritians had found them. Positions. He barked, his voice low but commanding. The security team moved into place, weapons at the ready. The miners huddled together, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The footsteps grew louder, and then the first Naritian soldiers appeared at the entrance to the cavern. They were heavily armed, their sleek, dark armor reflecting the dim light of the cave. Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline as he sized up the enemy. The Naritians were confident, but they had no idea what they were walking into. "Wait for my signal," Marcus whispered into his comms. His team held their breath, fingers poised on triggers. The Naritians advanced, moving cautiously into the cavern. They scanned the area, their weapons ready, but they didn't see the traps. Marcus waited until they were deep inside, the perfect position for an ambush. "Now," Marcus shouted. The cave erupted in a hail of gunfire and explosions. The traps went off, sending shrapnel and debris flying through the air. The Naritians were caught off guard, their formation crumbling as they scrambled to respond. Marcus and his team opened fire, their shots precise and deadly. The cavern echoed with the sounds of battle, the clash of metal, and the cries of the wounded. The Naritians fought back fiercely, but Marcus's team held their ground. The narrow confines of the cave worked to their advantage, limiting the Naritians' ability to maneuver. Marcus moved through the chaos like a ghost, his combat instincts honed to perfection. He took down enemy after enemy, his mind focused solely on survival. But as the battle raged on, Marcus realized that they were being overwhelmed. The Naritians were pouring more troops into the cavern, and his team was running low on ammunition. They couldn't hold out much longer. "Fall back," Marcus ordered, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. The team retreated deeper into the cave, firing as they went. The Naritians pursued, relentless in their attack. Marcus knew they were running out of time. They needed a miracle. Just as they reached the final chamber of the cave, a deafening roar filled the air. Marcus looked up in shock as the ceiling of the cavern began to collapse. Massive boulders tumbled down, crushing everything in their path. The Naritians were caught in the deadly avalanche. Their screams cut short as they were buried under tons of rock. Marcus and his team barely managed to avoid the falling debris, taking cover in a small alcove. When the dust finally settled, the cavern was eerily silent. The Naritians were gone, buried under the rubble. Lydia's voice crackled through the comms, her tone urgent. "Marcus, what's happening? Are you okay?" "We're alive," Marcus replied, his voice hoarse. The cave collapsed. "The Naritians they're gone." There was a brief pause before Lydia spoke again, relief evident in her voice. "The rescue team is almost there. Hold on a little longer." Marcus leaned against the wall, exhaustion washing over him. They had survived, but just barely. The cost had been high, and the fight was far from over. But for now, they had won. As he looked at his team, battered but alive, Marcus knew that this victory was just the beginning. Valas would come for them again, but they would be ready. And next time, they would be the ones to strike first. The aftermath and resolve. The rescue team arrived soon after, their transport ship touching down on the moon's surface with a hiss of released pressure. Marcus and his team emerged from the cave, blinking in the harsh light as they were greeted by the fresh troops. The miners, still shaken but alive, were escorted aboard, their ordeal finally over. Lydia met Marcus at the landing ramp, her eyes searching his face for any sign of injury. "You did it," she said softly, relief washing over her. "Barely," Marcus replied, his voice tired. "But it's not over. Valas won't stop until he gets what he wants." Lydia nodded, understanding the unspoken resolve in Marcus's words. Then we'll be ready. We'll hit him where it hurts. Marcus looked out at the desolate landscape of the moon, his mind already planning their next move. He had faced countless enemies in his career, but none had been as relentless or personal as Valis. The Naritian commander had made it clear that this was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a war of attrition, and Marcus intended to win. As the transport ship lifted off, leaving the barren moon behind, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had been pushed to his limits, but he had survived. Now, it was time to take the fight to Valis. The Naritians had underestimated humanity's resolve, and they would pay dearly for that mistake. Lydia watched him, her eyes filled with admiration and concern. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with Marcus leading the charge, she believed they could overcome any obstacle. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, and they would show the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit. And when the final battle came, Valis would learn that there was nothing more dangerous than a human pushed to the brink. For Marcus, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, and he would stop at nothing to ensure that justice was served.